I still remember that morning like it was something worth holding on to. I woke up early, showered, shaved, put on that navy button-down Jenna always said brought out my eyes. It was just a weeknight, but I didn't care. That day meant something. It was Jenna's birthday, and not just any birthday. It marked 9 years since we got married, almost a decade. That had to count for something. My name's Mark. I'm 37, and I live just outside of St. Louis. We're not fancy people, never have been. But I'd made dinner reservations at Corso's, the Italian place Jenna loved since before we even got married. She once said the gnocchi there was better than her mom's. That was high praise. I had a small gift wrapped in the glove box, nothing crazy, just a pendant with a small emerald, her birthstone. Thoughtful, right? I texted her around noon just to say, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Table's at 7. Love you." She didn't reply for an hour, which was already unusual. When her response came, it was short. "Work's crazy. Might be late. Don't wait." That was it. No heart emoji, no "love you too." No birthday energy, no exclamation marks. Just flat and mechanical like an email from a coworker. My stomach twisted a bit when I read it, but I brushed it off. I even chuckled to myself, thinking maybe she was planning something, like one of those surprise, make it look boring and then wow me kinds of nights. I've seen that happen in movies. Maybe this was that. Still, something about her message sat wrong with me. I stared at it for a few minutes longer than I should have. I even reread it like it would change. The coldness in her tone felt like a door closing, but I told myself not to read into it. I cleaned up around the house, lit one of the candles she liked, the citrus basil one, and set the table just in case she wanted dessert at home. She'd be home, eventually, and maybe she'd smile when she walked in. Maybe we'd laugh and eat and pretend like we were still okay. Maybe. Jenna walked through the door at exactly 8:47 p.m. I remember the time because I'd been checking the clock every 5 minutes since 7. The food I'd picked up after canceling the reservation was already cold, and the candle had burned down to a pool of wax. She didn't say anything when she stepped inside. No, "Sorry I'm late," no explanation. Just placed her keys on the hook and set her purse down like it was any other night. She was holding a boutique shopping bag in one hand and a half-full iced coffee in the other. The kind from those overpriced cafes she used to say were a waste of money. What got me first was the dress, not one I recognized. It was sleeveless, a little lower cut than what she usually wore to the office, and tight in a way that said it wasn't meant for cubicles or copy machines. I'd only seen her wear something like that once before, when we went to her cousin's wedding in Nashville. Back then she called it her fancy but I'll never actually wear this dress, and she never did. Not around me. Then came the scent. Her coat, the one she tossed over the back of the couch, had a smell I didn't recognize. Not her usual perfume, not even mine. It was sharp, spicy, like men's cologne, but subtle. It clung to the fabric just long enough for me to notice before she walked away. "Hey," I said, standing in the kitchen. My voice came out softer than I meant. She paused by the stairs, finally acknowledging me. "Hey, sorry I'm late. I told you work was crazy." I nodded, but something inside me shifted. "Yeah. You, grab a dress on your way home?" She looked down at herself, like she'd forgotten what she was wearing. "Oh, yeah. Carson's wife is launching a clothing line, so she gave me a few samples to try." Carson, I'd heard that name before. One of her coworkers from the Atlanta trip. I didn't say anything, just nodded and walked past her to the sink. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say. The air between us felt unfamiliar. "You hungry?" I asked. She hesitated. "Not really. I grabbed something earlier." Of course she did, and with that she went upstairs. Just like that, like it was any other night. She came downstairs the next morning while I was pouring coffee, hair damp from a shower, makeup half done. She looked fresher than she had the night before. Lighter, almost. I don't know how else to explain it. "Hey," she said, stretching like it was a normal Saturday and nothing strange had happened the night before. I didn't respond right away. Just handed her a mug and tried not to stare too long. Then she said it, casual as anything. "Oh, almost forgot. Look what Carson gave me." She reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek black box, not wrapped. Just handed it over like she was showing me a new gadget. Inside was a watch. Not just any watch. It was a Tag Heuer, silver and gold-toned, polished face, custom leather band. Luxury level expensive. The kind of thing you don't just give someone unless there's something behind it. I stared at it. She smiled. He said his company overordered for a corporate client or something, and he had a few extras. Thought I might like one. You don't wear watches, I said. She blinked. Yeah, well, I might start. It's pretty. You hate wrist tan lines. She laughed lightly, brushing it off. That was before I had something worth getting a tan line for. I nodded slowly, watching how her fingers moved across the dial, like she was already used to it. So Carson just gave this to you? Just out of the blue? Yeah. No receipt, no branding, no box paper, just handed it over. She looked up at me, her smile fading a little. What are you getting at? I shook my head. Nothing, just seems a little over the top for a coworker. She looked down, then back up again, sharper this time. You think I'm lying? I didn't say that. She held my gaze for a second too long. Then her phone buzzed on the counter behind her. Without turning around, she reached back and flipped it face down. Smooth, quiet. Like she'd done it 1,000 times. My stomach turned. I didn't push it. Just grabbed my keys, mumbled something about the grocery store, and left. But as I drove, the questions wouldn't shut up. Why would Carson, a guy she barely mentioned, be handing out designer watches to married coworkers? Why hide her phone? Why the sudden shift in her tone, warm to defensive, like she'd rehearsed this? And why, when she looked me in the eye, did I feel like I was staring at a stranger trying to act like my wife? That night, the silence between us was thicker than the sheets. Jenna slid into bed without a word, turning off her lamp before I even finished brushing my teeth. Her back faced me, the same way it had for the last 3 nights, but this time, it felt intentional, like a wall she was determined to hold up, brick by brick. I slipped under the covers, careful not to let my side of the mattress shift too much. I didn't want to startle her, or maybe I didn't want her to pretend to be startled, like even my weight had become too much. I stared up at the ceiling. It was dark, but not silent. The faint hum of her phone buzzed every few minutes. Not loud enough to hear the exact tone, but just enough to know it wasn't a one-time thing. A message, then another, then another. I glanced to the side. Her face was lit by the soft blue glow of the screen, her fingers moving quietly under the covers like she thought I couldn't see. She tilted the phone slightly away from me, careful with the angles. Every once in a while, her thumb would pause. Then the screen would dim, and a few seconds later, it would light up again. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. Her face was blank. Like whatever was happening on that screen was routine. I turned away and stared at the wall. I wanted to say something. I wanted to reach out and touch her shoulder, maybe ask what was going on. But I didn't. I couldn't. It felt like reaching out to someone halfway out the door. Instead, I lay there, wide awake, listening to the subtle click of her nails tapping the glass. There was something else in the room with us, something I couldn't name, but I could feel it. Not a person exactly, more like a presence, a weight, a shadow that had been growing over time. I used to think I knew every part of her, every thought, every mood. I used to feel safe beside her. But that night, I felt like I was lying next to a secret, and it was sleeping better than I was. The next morning, Jenna was already dressed when I came downstairs. She moved through the kitchen quickly, gathering her keys, slipping on her flats, checking her phone, all without looking me in the eye. Her hair was still damp, twisted up into a bun. She wore that coral blouse I'd always liked, but paired it with jeans and a cardigan that didn't match. Like she hadn't really planned her outfit. Just threw something on. I'm meeting Marcy for brunch, she said, finally glancing my way. I raised an eyebrow. Marcy? On a Monday morning? She didn't miss a beat. She took a personal day. I could use a little reset too. Didn't you say last week Marcy was flying out to visit her sister in Portland? She paused, just for a second, a blink. She came back early. I nodded slowly. She grabbed her bag and slung it over her shoulder. The luxury watch from Carson sat there on the kitchen counter, where she'd left it last night. Untouched, forgotten, or maybe just abandoned. You're not wearing your new gift? I asked casually. She followed my eyes to the watch. Oh, number didn't go with the outfit? Didn't go with the outfit. For a piece she supposedly just had to try on and love the feel of, that felt like a weak excuse, especially coming from her, someone who once coordinated nail polish to a belt buckle, She kissed me on the cheek, light and dry, then walked out the door. I waited until I heard the garage close before I sat down at the table and stared at the watch again. Something about it just sat wrong in my gut. I couldn't stop thinking about that Atlanta trip she took 2 months ago, how she barely called while she was gone, how she came back with a tan she claimed was just from the hotel balcony, and a new energy she hadn't had in years. I told myself it was the conference, or the change of pace. Something benign, but now I wasn't so sure. Since then, little things had started to shift. She never left her phone unattended. It was always face down, always near her, even if she was just taking out the trash. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen overnight. Now it stayed tucked under her pillow, like a secret she didn't want me stumbling over. And me? I kept telling myself not to assume the worst, that maybe this was just a rough patch. But the truth was starting to take shape, quietly, slowly, and it was getting harder and harder to ignore. It started with a photo. I wasn't even looking for anything. I was scrolling through Instagram while waiting in the drive-thru, half distracted, just trying to kill time. And then, out of nowhere, there it was. A mutual connection. A coworker of Jenna's, someone I barely knew. Some HR lady named Lauren from her office in Atlanta had posted wedding pictures, a weekend event. A big outdoor affair with fairy lights, a vineyard backdrop, and all the usual hashtags. SCU, love wins, Dakash, perfect weekend, and Michael and Claire. But the third photo stopped me cold. It was Jenna, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. They weren't holding hands, nothing overt. But she was looking at him in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not with me, anyway. Her body angled slightly toward him, her smile soft and unguarded. And he was looking back at her like he knew something I didn't. The caption just said, "Some of our favorite people. Can't wait to work with these two on Monday." I zoomed in, studying his face. Tall, clean-cut, tan. He looked familiar. And then I remembered. She had mentioned him once. Briefly, Michael. The guy she was helping on board in Atlanta. Said he was new, a bit awkward, kind of sweet. I barely thought twice at the time, but seeing him now, in that moment, with her, something snapped into place. I didn't go home right away. I parked in an empty grocery lot and just sat there, staring at my phone. How many signs had I ignored? I thought about that cologne on her coat, the mystery shopping bag, the texting in bed, the luxury watch, and now, this look, that knowing smile she wore for someone else. It wasn't just my imagination. That evening, after she claimed she was working late again, I opened the Find My iPhone app. Years ago, we'd set up shared tracking, mostly for safety, after she once got a flat tire on the interstate. We never turned it off. She said she was staying near the city at her firm's satellite office. But her location? A resort. A high-end resort 2 counties away. Not a conference center. Not an office building. I stared at the blinking dot for a long time. It wasn't the tracking itself that gutted me. It was the fact that she'd lied without hesitation. Not even a pause. The next day I called the resort. I gave a fake name. Asked to confirm a reservation under Michael Reyes. The woman on the phone checked, then said, yes. He had checked in Friday. 2 guests. Private suite. I didn't ask who the second guest was. I already knew. All the little pieces. All the quiet instincts I had shoved aside for weeks. They'd been telling me the truth all along. She wasn't distant. She wasn't tired. She wasn't stressed. She was gone. She just hadn't packed her bags yet. I didn't confront her that night. Not with words, anyway. By the time she pulled into the driveway Sunday evening, I was already finished. Everything was in motion. I'd spent the day calling banks, changing passwords, pulling paperwork from the safe. I'd already talked to a lawyer that morning, just an initial consultation, but enough to get the ball rolling. She parked the car like nothing was wrong, walked up the front steps with a smile on her face, keys jingling like she was just coming back from brunch. Like she hadn't spent the weekend in a resort with another man. I watched her on the security camera from the upstairs office. The one she didn't know I installed 6 months ago after someone tried breaking into a neighbor's place. I never told her about the new system. It felt like too much back then. Now, it felt like insurance. She reached for the doorknob, and stopped, because it didn't turn. She tried again, rattling it a little, then leaned forward and rang the doorbell. I didn't answer. She called my name, then rang it again, harder this time. "Mark," she said, her voice sharp now. "Why is the door locked?" I picked up my phone and opened the security app. I clicked into the audio channel and spoke, calm and slow. "You no longer live here?" She froze. "Excuse me?" I repeated it. "You no longer live here? Your name is off the lease, the joint accounts are frozen, and legal counsel has been retained. Please do not attempt to enter the property again." She stepped back, staring into the camera like she was trying to see my face through the lens. "This is a joke," she said. "Mark, open the door." I didn't reply. "Open the damn door!" She banged on it now, loud enough to wake the neighbors. Then she tried her key again. It didn't work, of course. I'd changed the locks 2 hours ago, every one of them. Her voice started to crack. "You don't get to just do this. We need to talk." "No," I said through the mic. "We really don't." I ended the call. The screen went black. For a few minutes, I just sat there, staring out the office window, watching her pace in the driveway. Her hands were clenched. She looked confused, angry, scared. She kept checking her phone, probably calling me, probably texting. But I didn't answer. I'd already made the decision. This wasn't about revenge. This was about boundaries. The kind you draw when someone's already crossed every single line. She was finally seeing consequences. Not screaming, not pleading. Just a locked door, a camera, and the sound of her own footsteps retreating down the walk. It was the first time in weeks I felt anything close to peace. By the time Monday morning rolled around, I had my case almost entirely sorted. The paperwork, the tracking logs, the bank statements, the security footage, everything was neatly filed and ready to go. The house was secure, the joint accounts were frozen, and I had already filed a formal complaint for emotional distress. I wasn't sure how long it would take for everything to process, but I didn't care. I wasn't looking for an immediate win. I just wanted a clean break. I was done. Jenna had called and texted more times than I could count, but I hadn't responded to a single message. She showed up on the doorstep twice that morning, knocking softly, calling my name, like she was trying to coax me out, like I was still the guy who would let her talk her way through any mess. I wasn't. I didn't open the door. Instead, I sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee and reading over the legal documents. This wasn't personal anymore. It was business. I had been methodical about everything, right down to the last detail. The lawyer I hired, a friend of a friend who specialized in family law, was already on the case. She drafted the preliminary filings, making sure I had a firm grip on everything before I made any moves. She even suggested a few strategic delays to prevent Jenna from getting too comfortable with her plans. I thought I would feel relief once I had everything in motion, but instead, there was just an eerie kind of calm, a quiet that felt too still. The silence lasted until the afternoon. That's when the first wave of fallout hit. My phone buzzed just as I was reviewing the tracker logs on my laptop. A call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then picked it up. "Hello? Mr. Turner?" a woman's voice asked. She sounded polite, formal. "This is Dana Fields from Hamilton and Company. We're calling regarding an ongoing investigation into an employee, Jenna Turner." I felt my stomach tighten. "Is there something I can help you with?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Unfortunately, sir, we're hoping to verify a few details. Your wife has listed you as an emergency contact on her profile, and as part of a company review, we need to confirm some information." I leaned back in my chair, frowning. "Emergency contact? Why are you asking about that now?" "Well, there's been some irregularities regarding her recent conduct with company funds. We've been made aware of some issues, and we need to finalize her status within the company." The room spun slightly. I'd been expecting this to happen. I just didn't expect it so soon. "Is she under investigation?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. The pause on the other end felt longer than it should have. "Yes, sir. We're looking into some discrepancies. It's still in the early stages, but we'll need to contact you again soon for clarification." I gripped the phone tighter. "You'll contact me? Fine. Just make sure you send the paperwork." After we hung up, I stared at the screen for a long time. So Jenna had already started making waves at work. She had to know something was coming. Or maybe she thought I wouldn't follow through. Either way, things were shifting. The people she trusted were beginning to see the cracks. And the cracks weren't just at work. The fallout continued to grow. I spent the rest of the day in the office, going over more documents, keeping my eyes focused. But when the evening came, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had already started to unravel. I knew it was only a matter of time before Jenna found out what I had done. But it wasn't just about me anymore. I was removing her from everything. Physically, emotionally, financially, I was cutting ties. And the hardest part was realizing how easy it was. When I didn't answer my phone that night, it wasn't because I hadn't seen it ringing. It was because I didn't want to hear her. The last thing I needed was her voice pleading through the line again, pretending like we could fix things. She had a choice. She had her chance. And now she had to deal with the consequences. It's funny how quickly people adjust to the absence of someone they once relied on. When Jenna showed up again a few days later, she didn't seem as desperate as before. No pounding on the door, no frantic messages. She stood at the front gate with her hands clasped, like she'd resigned herself to the inevitable, but was still holding out for something. A crack in the door, a moment of weakness, some sign that I was going to open up and let her back in. She didn't look like the woman I once loved. She looked tired, empty even. I watched her for a while, standing there in the cold, her breath fogging in the air. She had the same tired eyes, the same disheveled hair, but something had shifted in her posture. She wasn't the confident, independent Jenna anymore. She was smaller, more vulnerable. And that was the moment I knew for sure. I was done. I didn't open the door, didn't even move to greet her. Instead, I stayed inside, the cold air from the open window creeping in, making my skin prickle. After a few minutes, I could hear the familiar sound of her knocking softly. It wasn't urgent anymore, more like a whisper against the wood, asking for permission, begging for it. "Mark," she said, her voice small and hesitant, like she wasn't sure what to say anymore. "Please, just talk to me." The silence in the house was oppressive. I let the quiet stretch between us, letting her words hang in the air, unanswered. I wanted her to feel the weight of it, the distance between us. I wanted her to feel the coldness of the space she'd created, the chasm she couldn't cross anymore. I didn't move. Jenna's voice broke through again, softer this time, almost pleading. "Please, I know you're angry, but we can fix this. We can make it right." I closed my eyes, leaning my head against the wall. I hadn't heard the door rattle again. She hadn't tried to force her way in. She was waiting for me to make the next move, like she always had, but not this time. I pressed a button on the security system, and the message appeared on the screen. "You no longer live here." There. No emotion, no fight. Just the words, cold and final. I watched her read them. Her eyes flickered over the words, and I could almost see her deflate, the hope leaving her face as she absorbed what I'd just done. She knocked one last time, harder, louder, a final attempt, desperate. But I didn't open the door. I heard her walk away. And then the silence returned. It felt permanent. The next day I spoke to the lawyer again. Everything was moving forward. I was already one step closer to ending it all. Legally, emotionally, financially. I was making sure there was no room for any more manipulation, no more games. The weight in my chest was gone. It wasn't a relief. It wasn't satisfaction. It was just done. But there was one thing left to do. When the final papers came through, I signed them without hesitation. No more waiting, no more pretending. I didn't owe her any more explanations. She'd had her chance. She'd made her choice. And I'd made mine. When the divorce was final, when everything was sealed and signed, I sent Jenna one last message. It wasn't bitter, it wasn't cruel, just short and to the point. "I hope you find what you're looking for." I didn't need to say more. She had enough to figure out on her own, and I was free. It's strange the way life continues even after you've made a clean break. You think everything will change, that the world will feel different, but the days just keep passing. The bills keep coming. The mornings start just like they always have. Nothing really shifts until you force it to. And I was forcing it. I was done with Jenna. Done with the lies. Done with the game she'd been playing. I spent the first few weeks just making sure the legal side of things went smoothly. My lawyer was quick to get the paperwork filed, and when it came to the emotional distress case, we had everything we needed. The tracker logs, the phone records, the receipts, everything connected, everything documented. Jenna had her lawyer, of course, but it didn't matter. I was several steps ahead of her. There was no way she could win this fight. She had already lost by betraying me in the first place. I knew that, but even so, it didn't stop me from checking my phone every time it buzzed, expecting her to call or send another message. She didn't. Not at first. A few days later, I received a text from her. Just a simple, "Can we talk?" I stared at it, then deleted it without replying. That was the last time she reached out. After that, nothing. I could breathe now. And it was different. It was quiet, but not in a bad way. It was the first time in months I felt like I could just exist without constantly watching my back, without wondering if she was hiding something or lying about where she was going, without questioning if I was enough. It wasn't just the marriage that ended. It was the weight of carrying someone else's emotional baggage. It was the burden of pretending everything was fine, even when I knew it wasn't. Then came the knock on the door. I opened it without hesitation, expecting it to be a delivery or one of the neighbors. But standing there was someone I hadn't expected. It was my mom. Her eyes were red, her expression tight. Her hands clutched a small bag, and she seemed to hesitate at the threshold, unsure whether to come inside or not. "Hey, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's up?" I just wanted to check on you." She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. How are you doing? Is everything okay?" I studied her for a moment. She was trying so hard to play the concerned mother, but there was something behind her eyes, something that made me realize she didn't care as much as she pretended. Not really. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, holding the door open. "Everything's fine." She nodded slowly, looking at the floor. "I know things have been rough with you and Jenna. I just thought I should come over." I couldn't help but feel irritated. Jenna was her daughter-in-law. She'd had more than enough chances to show up, but now that everything was falling apart, she was playing the role of the worried mother. "You don't have to worry about me," I said. "I've got it handled." She swallowed hard, then looked up, her gaze meeting mine. "I know you've been through a lot, but you don't have to do everything on your own. You know that, right?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. She wasn't asking for an answer. She was asking for forgiveness. For herself. "I'm just tired of being the one who picks up the pieces," I finally said, my voice low. "I've been doing that my whole life. For you, for Jenna, for everyone. And I can't anymore." I saw her wince. She hadn't expected that. And for the first time, I felt a small amount of satisfaction in making her face the truth. "I don't need your help," I said. "I need you to stay out of it. Stay out of my life and let me live mine." Her face crumpled. "Mark, But I didn't let her finish. "Goodbye, Mom," I said, closing the door slowly. I didn't feel bad about it, not for a second. The aftermath was like that, cleaning up pieces that didn't belong to me. A few weeks later, Jenna's workplace reached out to me. They were opening an internal investigation into her actions, and I was asked to participate. My lawyer had already prepared me for this. They were looking into financial misconduct. She'd taken too many liberties with her position, and she had crossed lines I didn't even know existed. The moment they mentioned her being under investigation, I could feel the pieces clicking into place. This was the fallout she'd been avoiding, the consequences she thought would never come, but they were coming for her now. I didn't feel satisfaction, I didn't feel triumph, but I did feel something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Peace. It was over. And when the final settlement came through, I knew it was really over. I had let go of everything that had been weighing me down, and for the first time in years, I felt lighter, free. The silence was mine now, and I wasn't afraid of it anymore.